Hello. Are you wondering what should go into an outdoor classroom? You're in luck. I'm Nicole Dravillas-Rabel, and this is Wildwood Teaching. And I often get people contacting me with that very question. I'm trying to start an outdoor preschool, or I'm trying to take my preschool outside. What do I need to have in place? And what kind of budget do I need in order to get these things in place? And honestly, my simple answer is what you need is an outdoor place to go and a curiosity, a willing to explore it with children. But if you are looking to build up an outdoor classroom, the easiest way to think about it is to think about what would you put in an indoor classroom that focuses on the children's needs, their developmental needs, kind of throughout different domains and different areas of development. So just as you would have blocks, an area for art, some literacy books in your indoor classroom, you're going to want to think about setting up an outdoor classroom in the same way. So I thought it might be helpful to give you a quick little tour of some of the elements of our outdoor classroom piece of Wildwood Nature School. We also have the forest that we go into, but we spend part of our day here in the outdoor classroom yard, and then a second part of our day usually in the forest. And before I start, I just want to point out that you can see the ground is wet behind me. It is wet. We do have a basket of books. The books change out regularly. There are always new editions, things coming out. But that basket of books goes inside each afternoon and comes back outside in the morning, and that's like our library center. All right, so the first thing I want to show you here is that we have a collection of loose parts, right? Of whatever we find around here, of rocks, of pine cones. We also have loose parts kind of spread out throughout the yard, so you'll see that too as we go along. The next thing that I wanted to show you, just as you have a sensory table, inside, you are going to want a sensory table outside. So not very budget friendly is the very expensive water table that I purchased because I wanted that spigot on in the back so that children could control the water coming in and out. And as you see, they've largely turned it into a mud kitchen. But behind it is maybe the second DIY that I made budget friendly. It's a pallet with little hooks in it. I call it the water wall. Basically, it's like a marble run with water, and children can put the gutters, their tubes, they can hook onto the hooks and then pour the water through and see how it falls. The other thing I wanted to point out was that within each area, I try to have a way to practice multiple things. Show that, yes, this is a sensory area, but I also want children to have ways to think about math maybe, and so these are our pie charts that they use to make pies and cakes, or maybe literacy. You can see our very well loved recipes. I also have open sheets where children can write their own recipes. And every once in a while I change out the recipes, change out some of the materials, but for the most part it's kind of a self-sustaining area. So you can see we're headed this way over to our music wall. And basically a whole bunch of wind chimes, some found objects. Again, I add to it as I find things. So metal keys work well, wood works well, not just the grates, but the solid bins that come from stoves that are like, I guess they're food catchers. And the children have just to scrape and tap the items with the sticks to make music. Also keep over here other items that might make music so that children have an area for creative expression. All right, we are headed over to the sand pit. And it is covered right now because when we're not here, we cover it so that animals don't get into it. But quickly, some elements, I'm sure you are familiar with a sandbox. You are familiar with sand play as another sensory area. Again, there is a water element, something that children can control, where they can add water to their sand creations and to experiment with how much water they might need to make molds to see what's the difference between dry sand and wet sand. So I kind of think of this as giving them some science. What I'm hoping to do over the summer is to build a little Tom Bedard style contraption with PVC pipes that goes over the sandbox, and that will help children use the sand on a different level, that might have some balances connected to it. Again, adding in that science and math to different areas. Of course, we wouldn't be complete without a dramatic play area. So 2 elements to the dramatic play area. Another no carpentry skills needed DIY. And this is our puppet theater. It's a canvas fabric that I cut a hole out of and hung up. If it's going to rain a lot, you want to make sure that your fabric is waterproof. And then we also have a little playhouse, which very often becomes a restaurant and is another area to take the recipes. And there's a chalkboard in there for children to take notes on recipes or to take orders from the customers at their restaurants. All right, walking over here to our last area that I want to show you today, which is our garden. Because we are outside and it makes sense to have a place for children to be planting. You can kind of see the tree house in the back. But what I really wanted to point out here is our paint wall. And again, budget friendly, no carpentry skills required DIY, just plastic sheeting that I hung from the fence, and children can paint directly on that canvas. They can be inspired by the forest behind the garden or the plants in the garden or whatever they're fancy, and then I just use the garden hose to hose it down, and it's simple cleanup too. Another thing I'm hoping to do over the summer is use the rest of the fencing. Maybe create some sort of water wall, or maybe add a dry erase board or a chalkboard, because this fencing is kind of wasted space, and you know, it's nice for children to be able to work on that vertical space. So of course you can always bring things into the area, right? You can bring blocks. I have an easel, just a regular art easel. So kind of think about your outdoor classroom as a classroom and everything that you would include indoors, bring it outdoors. Make sure you have areas for different developmental domains for children to practice. So I hope you found this little tour helpful. I will see you here next week for another free episode of Wildwood Teaching. I will see you there.